Welcome back to the Holy Land Uncovered. Hanukkah is the story of a revolt by the Jewish Maccabees against the Greeks, who had turned the ancient Jewish temple into a pantheon for their multiple gods, desecrating it. Our reporter Uri Shapira has more on the Maccabees Revolt and where it all began.
It was the first and probably one of the last rebellions in history when the Jews defeated an empire in the Holy Land. A story of courage, ambitions, and a lot of Jewish chutzpah. This is the story of the Maccabee Revolt of the 2nd century BCE. The background starts with Alexander the Great.
Alexander the Great conquered a large part of the known world at that time, but he dies at a young age, and he doesn't leave someone to follow him in his footsteps, a ruler. So his successors fight for control. And in this area, in the beginning, it's the Ptolemaic Empire. And then there's a huge battle up north in the area of the Banias, where the Seleucid Empire captures this region from the Ptolemaic Empire, and this land falls under the Seleucid Empire's control. That's when we're talking about decrees against the Jews and all kinds of things that will lead up to the Maccabean Revolt.
The city of Modiin in central Israel was the headquarters of the Maccabees during their long revolt.
Modiin was the hometown of the Maccabees. That's where the Hasmonean family lived. That's where the whole revolt against the Hellenistic Empire broke out, in the town of Modiin. We are now in the geographical area of Modiin. Behind us, behind this hill, is the modern city of Modiin today. We're on the outskirts of the modern city of Modiin. And when the city was supposed to expand in this area, they had excavations here and they discovered something amazing. A Jewish village from the times of the Maccabees. And in this Jewish village, they found a number of things. They found a main street and a number of other streets going out with homes and water pits and wine presses. And even the most amazing thing that they found here was the synagogue. A synagogue, one of the most ancient synagogues known today in the world from the times of the Hasmoneans. So it could be that the Maccabees even came here and sat in this very synagogue, maybe prayed or learned or spoke to each other here in this synagogue.
Some of the finds here in the area of Modiin show us how life was during the 2nd century BCE, a time of political and social transition in the area.
In front of us, we have one of the more sophisticated wine presses of its time. We're talking about the Hellenistic period, which is the time of the Maccabees. You see how you have like a niche in the rock in the back over there. That part over there was to hold a large wooden beam. When that wooden beam would come to the center and you'd put weights on the other side and have it squeezed down onto baskets with the grapes inside, with whatever you still have with the remains of the grapes and liquids, and squeeze it much stronger and have more liquid come out. And with this method, you could even make new kinds of wines that you couldn't make before.
One of the more famous battles occurred at a place called Emmaus, also sacred for Christians. The book of Maccabees mentions the Jewish hero Judah the Maccabee, who wisely managed to defeat the forces of heroic figure Georges, who came with 40,000 troops and 7,000 horses.
The intelligence here is the key. You want to surprise your enemy before your enemy surprises you. So the Seleucid forces send an elite fighting force up the mountains in order to surprise the Maccabees. When they finally arrive, they see campfires still burning, they see the tents, but they come in and they see that it's all abandoned. They think, wait a second, maybe the Maccabees were, out of fright, fled. And they look and they go looking all over the hills and the mountains for the Maccabees, and they don't find them. Finally, they have no choice and they start returning to their camp. Meanwhile, Judah, who had intelligence of his own and knew that they were trying to surprise him, came around in an alternate route, a secret route, down with his fighters, and secretly surprised the main battle camp here, who was just sitting and waiting and not expecting them. Judah takes advantage of this and runs after them, and the battlefield is his. Not only was it a huge battle that spread out throughout the land and brought more fighters to join his forces, but also they gained a lot of provisions and supplies and mainly weapons here from this camp that they plundered and took for their own.
The book of Maccabees tells us the story of this glorious revolt and portrays some of the most iconic figures in the history of the Jewish people. One of them is Mattathias, a man who insisted on fighting for his faith.
Even if all the nations that live under the rule of the king obey him and have chosen to obey his commandments, every one of them abandoning the religion of their ancestors, I and my sons and my brothers will continue to live by the covenant of our ancestors. Far be it from us to desert the law and the ordinances. We will not obey the king's words by turning aside from our religion.
Behind me is a grave that's associated with Mattathias. Whether it is or isn't, it's an opportunity to speak about who is this Mattathias. Mattathias is a father who has 5 sons. One of them is Judah the Maccabee. How many times does a father have all his 5 sons continue his legacy? Something amazing happened here. All his 5 sons continued in his direction. What was that direction? Well, at the time, the Hellenistic period, there was a lot of Greek philosophy and Greek culture in the air and influencing the people of the empire. Some of the Jews here decided that they are going to welcome this Hellenistic culture amongst them. And some decided, like Mattathias, no, we have our own Jewish culture, we shouldn't replace it with a new one.
The 8th and final battle between the Maccabees and the Seleucid forces took place at 160 BCE at Elstein. It saw the death of Maccabees leader Judah, but also the inevitable victory of the Maccabees. Where are the Maccabees buried? This question remained open until today. One possible location is here, near the city of Modiin.
The last and final battle, the 8th battle, the Battle of Elstein, in the mountains, caught Judah by surprise. And he lost a lot of men there, and he himself lost his life in that battle. Later, he was brought to burial by his brother Simeon, together with other brothers that had in the meantime also died. And Simeon, it says in the book of Hasmonean that he built their graves to be something magnificent. He built them up very high, it could be seen from far away, and he put 7 pyramids on those graves. Somebody who came from the coast could already look up and see their graves from a distance, which has brought people throughout the generations to look for where those graves are. In the 4th century, we still have a mention by Eusebius in the Onomasticon that those graves are still there somewhere near the village of Modiin. And this is the region, the area of Modiin. We find all kinds of Jewish graves like the graves that we're sitting right next to now. In these caves right next to us, we found burial boxes that had Hebrew and Aramaic writing on it, bearing Jewish names. One of those names, Simeon, which was the same name as Judah's brother.
After the successful Maccabee Revolt, the Hasmonean dynasty ruled the country for 80 years. It was the last Jewish-controlled regime in the region until the creation of the State of Israel in the 20th century.